The United States has a population of north of 327 million people. Why do we need more kids?
All right, so I want you to hear clearly her overarching thought. We already have over 300 million people. Why do we need more kids? Now, what you need to do after you initiate a thesis like that is you then need to start making points that support your thesis. Joy Reid recently went to TikTok in order to express her great frustration with some of the narratives coming out around pro-life and pro-choice conversations, pushing couples to consider having more children. This is a common call, especially on the right side of politics, although there are many people who are in the center and some who are even on the left who are just looking at the facts of birth rate and replacement rate and making these same calls. However, it is known as kind of a right-facing issue where people are pushing and even trying to legislate incentives for people to grow their families and to have more children. And suffice it to say, Joy Reid does not agree with that argument. Let's have a listen to some of her thoughts.
The United States has a population of north of 327 million people. Why do we need more kids?
All right, so I want you to hear clearly her overarching thought. We already have over 300 million people. Why do we need more kids? Now, what you need to do after you initiate a thesis like that is you then need to start making points that support your thesis. Unfortunately, Joy Reid, who I think is, she's going off the cuff. Typically, she's on a script and a teleprompter on her show on MSNBC. She's just putting up a TikTok video. She's kind of just shooting from the hip because what's going to happen is a series of non sequiturs that don't actually apply to the arguments being made by people who do push for the expansion of families, having more kids, and just other kind of hot button political issues. We'll listen to a little of it regardless.
Your party, Senator Tuberville, is the one screaming that 10 million immigrants, which I don't even know that that number even makes any sense because it doesn't, have streamed into the country since Joe Biden has been president. And you're claiming that that's too many people, that if more people come into the southern border, this is some sort of crisis because we've got too many people and we've got no more space and we can't afford more people. But now you're saying we need more kids?
So this is a somewhat compelling argument if you don't think through her actual argument. So number one, it's just simply a category error. And the next part of her argument is kind of just an ad hominem attack on Senator Tuberville and somehow trying to link him to racism and slavery in a way that seems just on the surface unfair. So we're not going to even touch that. But let's talk about this. So she says, we already have 327 million people, and you're complaining that 10 million immigrants are coming in undocumented and that we don't have the resources to take care of them. So let's take this apart piece by piece. Number one, there's a massive category error here between the call for citizens of the United States across all races, all classes, all ethnicities, all backgrounds, all education levels. Just a call, like the one thing that people are calling for is, be a citizen of the United States or be like entering legally or whatever. So that's the actual call is, hey, in America, Americans need to be having more children. Now, that is a different issue than whether or not we should have a porous border that allows upwards of 10 million people to cross. Now, the number she is citing is an estimate that by the end of Joe Biden's term, 10 million people will have crossed in undocumented, which is an actual estimate. We're already up to north of 7 million people that we know have come across the border and been released into the interior. So this isn't about the border debate because hopefully you have some level of a nuanced vision there, and it's fine to want boundaries because to have a country you need boundaries. You should also have compassion for the people who are desperate, and a lot of people are coming over because they're desperate. And you should also feel strongly that people who are coming over for nefarious means and trafficking drugs and weapons and criminals into the country should be stopped, and we should have an opportunity and laws in place to stop that, and we should enforce the laws that are on the books. So that's the whole border conversation, which is a different conversation that she's trying to tie in, and she's just making a category error, which makes it a non sequitur. My thesis is 327 million is too many people. And so you're concerned about that, but you shouldn't be concerned about that because you're also mad 10 million people are coming in. Well, if the American population increased the birth rate to where we added 10 million people who were citizens of the country, then that's the conversation we're having. This is a different conversation. Now, what about her point that we already can't take care of the people that we have? This is another non sequitur that's attached to the first one. So it does logically follow. It just doesn't tie to the thesis. So the 10 million people who are coming in undocumented, they're not coming in typically with homes to live in or with jobs already secured. And so they often find themselves in difficult situations. And you do see border towns like Eagle Pass being overrun and the systems of the local governments being overrun. You do see Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, saying that they are in an absolute crisis because they have an expectation to take care of the welfare of all people in their city, including people who are not American citizens. And so, yes, programs, systems, and structures are being overrun, but not because people who are established as families are propagating more children. I have 3 kids. If we added a 4th to our family, we would be fine. We would go into our budget. We would shift money around to make sure that we probably have more grocery money, a little bit less fun money for the weekends, and we would be fine. That's very different than someone entering with no plan, no job, and no infrastructure and able to support their life. And then you multiply that by about 10 million people. So what she is saying here is not just a bad argument where she never supports her thesis. It's also just wrong on the merits because there is, in fact, an issue. While we do have 327 million people in America, Americans are producing children below replacement rate, which is exactly what it sounds like. We are not having enough children to replace ourselves, which means we might have 327 million people in the country today, but in the next generation, we will have far fewer people in our country. And the generation preceding that, we will have even fewer people in our country unless we get at least at replacement rate or above replacement rate. This is a study that's out of Wharton. And here's the summary. The U.S. population's total fertility rate is now approximately 1.7 births per female, which is below the replacement rate of 2.1 that is required for the U.S. population not to shrink without increases in immigration. Women are delaying motherhood from the 2006 average range of 25 to 29 to the 30 to 34 range today. So people are having less children, 1.7 compared to 2.1 where we were at in about 2009. And women are not having children until they're into their early 30s instead of in their mid 20s. Birth rates, here's what it affects. It affects the potential size of the workforce, GDP, debt, and other macroeconomic indicators. Demographers and economists measure fertility using several different measures. Each measure has its advantage depending on the research focus. This post reports fertility trends from 2006 through 2019 for several of the most prominent measures. And so just to say it and make it obvious, it takes 2 people to have a child. So in order to be at replacement rate, then we have to be having on average 2.1 children for every childbearing female. That keeps us slightly above replacement rate since the 2 people are creating 2.1 children. Now you can't have 0.1 children. That's why it is a statistic looking across all people. So this just doesn't add up to the facts. Her thesis, we have 327 million people. Why in the world do you want people to have more kids? Well, the simple fact of the matter is because we are below replacement rate, which means we are a dying country. Now we have a drug epidemic like we've never seen before. Almost 100,000 Americans are now being taken out by drugs. The leading cause is fentanyl, which again is coming primarily across the southern border. And so we have more people dying. Suicide rates are going up. At the same time, birth rates are going down, which means, Joy Reid, we are a dying country. That is exactly why people should be pushed to have more children. There are serious economic problems that we are saving up for our future as people are living longer, which means they have more years in retirement, which means they are relying on a government who has promised Social Security for them. And we're not replacing ourselves on the back end to have a workforce paying taxes in order to create the Social Security net to pay the people who are retired and growing older and older because of scientific advancement. So we're living much older, and yet we're still below replacement rate, it is a bit of a disaster. Now, there's a deeper reason, a reason that goes all the way back to the ancient wisdom of Scripture. Here is the real core of the issue. Actively dissuading couples from having children is taking aim directly at the heart of God's creation mandate. When God creates in the creation narrative in Genesis 1, 2, and 3, he gives what is called the creative mandate. And the creative mandate says in part, God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. This is a call for people to come together, to leave their mother and father, to cling to their spouse as one flesh, and then to be fruitful together, which is a fruitful life, not just in producing offspring, but in living a life of purpose and living a life of meaning and contributing to the larger mission that God gave us in this world. To multiply, which is specifically to bear offspring in order to fill the earth and subdue it. We just had a great sermon at Meta Church where I'm the lead pastor. Our youth pastor, Tony Albano, came up and he talked about God's design for the family and how the family is supposed to be a multi-generational team that is on a mission together. And we don't see things this way. We live in a hyper individualized world. And because of that, we think of ourselves first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And then maybe we consider the needs of our family. And we believe that the job of parents, if we become parents, it is to set our children up just for individual success. And for most of human history, people followed God's model, which is that the family achieves success together. The family has a common mission together. And family gives you so much to live for. But in our world today, where you are the primary focus and you are in essence God and King, then if you believe children will be inconvenient to your instant gratification right now, you won't even consider bringing children into this world. And instead, you will sacrifice future lineage, sacrifice future success, sacrifice what comes from the pursuit of non-selfish desires and building into the life of someone else. The psalmist says, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Here's what family does. Family forces us to quell our natural, selfish, individualistic pursuits. This is why our current culture rejects the family institution more and more all the time, because it calls us out of the me and into the we that we were created to live in. Family teaches us how to sacrifice for the future. Our culture tells us to live to find instant gratification right here and right now. Joy Reid does not have a biblical framework for viewing the world. She has a very individualistic, modern framework that she is working out of, which is why she can ask what is both scientifically and statistically and philosophically an absurd question, which is, why would we ever want people to have more kids? God says, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. And as we walk away from the truths of God, we walk ourselves into disaster. We now have created, through individualistic, selfish pursuits, a country that is dying and dying faster and faster every day. So either we can turn back to those ancient truths and lean on them, and we can uplift the idea and the model of family, and we can learn how to build something that is bigger than ourselves, or we will stay on our current course and watch as our country collapses around us. If you enjoyed this clip, make sure you check out the full podcast and subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all new content. You can also support the channel at patreon.com/Clayton Tyner. Link is in the description below.